Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are strapping in for a very terrestrial look at an extraterrestrial dream.
Right.
We've pulled a stack of sources that all kind of center around how the greatest space ambitions of our time are being leveraged right here on Earth.
And our main source for this is a really fascinating breakdown. It's titled The Red Planet Ruse, Marketing the Martian Dream.
If you've been watching the headlines, you know this idea of colonizing Mars is a huge public aspiration for some big companies.
It's everywhere.
So our mission today is to get under the hood, go beyond the engineering and the rocket science. We want to explore why the idea of setting up shop on Mars isn't just a vision, it's what the source calls an insanely effective marketing lever. We're going to dissect exactly how this huge story, this narrative, is used to, manipulate business accountability and totally shift how we all perceive success.
And that framework is so important because you have to understand the psychology behind it first.
Sure.
What's really interesting here is that the idea of going to Mars, before you even get to the technical side of things, it hits this powerful psychological trifecta.
A trifecta.
Yeah, all at once. And it lets people, even really smart investors, just drop their usual skepticism and, tolerate promises that would otherwise seem completely vague.
Or just impossible. So what are the buttons? I feel like if we understand that cocktail, we can decode the whole thing.
Okay, so the source points to three main psychological buttons. First up is status.
Status.
Yeah, just being associated with a Mars mission, even as like an early customer or a junior engineer, it gives you this kind of instant visionary status. You're not just a buyer, you're a pioneer.
You're basically buying yourself a little spot in the future history books.
Exactly. Then the second button is salvation.
Salvation, that sounds big.
It is. It's that deep existential appeal. The story frames Mars as the necessary backup planet, the ultimate insurance policy for humanity.
So it's not a business venture, it's about the survival of the species.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So if you support it, you're supporting the continuation of humanity itself, which is a really powerful ethical lever to pull.
And that just washes away any smaller earthbound concerns, right?
Sure.
Does this product I bought today actually work well, or is this company being run efficiently?
Those details just become trivial. They seem petty when you're talking about existential survival.
Okay, and the third one?
And the third button is pure sci-fi wonder.
The cool factor.
Totally. It's the awe you feel when you see the visuals of, a futuristic base on a red planet. It taps into our nostalgia, all the movies we've seen, and just genuine inspiration. It makes the whole idea emotionally irresistible.
Status, salvation, and sci-fi wonder. It's a cognitive cocktail that's almost designed to bypass critical thinking.
Right.
You can't really criticize saving humanity and inspiring wonder without sounding like, a total downer.
Well, blanket, yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The source material says that the people creating these narratives are masters at using this cocktail to build what they call a narrative shield. So what's the fundamental technique there? How do they avoid accountability?
The main technique is removing any kind of near-term accountability by moving the goalposts into the unreachable. That's the phrase the source uses.
Unreachable?
Yeah, think about the huge overarching promise. We will build a self-sufficient city on Mars. Because that goal is so ambitious and so far away, decades maybe, it has no practical, near-term, falsifiable milestone for most people watching.
Falsifiable meaning something you can actually prove or disprove.
Exactly. So if a project has a huge setback, a delay of 2 years, 5 years, even 10 years, it doesn't trigger the usual panic. There's no need for that quarterly business accountability because the goal is just always further away. And that's okay, because it was always the long-term goal to begin with.
So the vagueness isn't a bug, it's actually a feature of the model.
It's the central feature.
If you have an Earth-based company and you miss a deadline by 6 months, that's a crisis. But if you miss a 20-year Mars colonization deadline by 6 months, who even notices?
It gives the company this huge operational freedom. They can pivot, they can take on more risk, they can use capital for other things entirely, and they don't get that severe public or investor backlash. Because they're always being judged by the ambition of that distant dream, not by, the efficiency of what they're doing today.
That structural lack of accountability is wow. And here's where it gets really interesting for me. They also use this tactic called borrowing legitimacy.
Yes, this is the art of mixing the real with the the ridiculous.
How does that work?
They take these genuine, hard-won achievements like landing rockets vertically or deploying huge satellite constellations, and they hold those up as proof of concept.
So they use those real engineering wins to imply that the much, much bigger claim of colonizing Mars is just as mature, just as well engineered, and basically inevitable.
It creates a halo effect. The complexity gap between, say, refueling a vehicle in orbit and designing a closed-loop life support system for 1,000 people on Mars it's immense.
It's astronomical.
But in the public mind, the success of the smaller achieved goal gets immediately applied to the vastly larger aspirational one.
I have to push back a little on that, though. I mean, surely sophisticated investors and engineers, they know that a vertical landing, while brilliant, isn't the same as a viable life support system, right?
Yeah.
Who are they really fooling here?
Well, they aren't trying to fool the engineers. They're optimizing for the narrative.
Yeah.
They're appealing to the emotion, to those status and salvation drivers in the general public and in the venture capital world, which, let's be honest, often prioritizes a disruptive vision over boring engineering homework.
So they create a climate where questioning the inevitable just becomes socially or professionally risky.
Exactly.
And this borrowing even extends to the language they use, which brings us to this idea of the mission shield. The sources highlight how the word mission acts as a shield, both for PR and for ethics when things go wrong.
That is a crucial insight. When things go wrong in a company with this kind of vision, and they always do, burn rate issues, layoffs, ethical problems, they get instantly reframed. They stop being seen as mismanagement or poor planning.
Right. They're not normal commercial setbacks.
Instead, they're consistently framed as just hard problems worth solving on the path to this heroic long-term mission.
Oh.
It immediately shifts the focus from internal competence to external heroism.
That reframing is everything. The failure isn't a failure of the business model. It's just the universe throwing up another obstacle that our visionary hero has to overcome.
And that shield is actively defensive too. The source notes it works externally. So if you, the learner, dare to criticize the operational issues or demand actual numbers,
You're not providing legitimate accountability.
no.
You're immediately labeled as anti-progress. Your criticism, no matter how valid, is painted as cynicism, like you're trying to stand in the way of humanity's future.
And who wants to be that person? That fear is a powerful brake on any real external scrutiny. It lets these companies operate with a freedom that, a normal terrestrial business could never get away with.
The narrative isn't just selling the future, it's actively managing how the present is perceived.
That's it.
It's fascinating how the story itself becomes a defense mechanism. Okay, let's pivot to the other side of this.
Yeah.
How this narrative transforms capital and, maybe more importantly, the consumer.
Right.
How does the Red Planet ruse actually translate into dollars and loyalty?
This is where the real business innovation is happening. The Mars narrative turns consumers into deeply committed believers.
More than just customers.
Way more. Remember those status and salvation drivers? People aren't just buying a product. They're buying a piece of an identity. I'm part of the future, or I'm supporting humanity's escape.
And that identity they buy is incredibly valuable to the company.
Oh, absolutely. Because it makes their customer base so much more tolerant. They'll accept flaws, they'll put up with missing features, they'll swallow price hikes, and they stick around through these long, frustrating hype cycles because their loyalty isn't really to the current flawed product, it's to the spectacular future they feel like they've invested their identity in.
So if you, the learner, are thinking about investing or buying into a vision like this, you have to ask yourself, am I buying a product or am I buying the identity of someone who is part of the future?
It's loyalty driven by aspiration, not satisfaction. And that same drive, it fuels the financial engines. Mars talk is how you justify these wild, unprecedented valuations we see.
How does the Mars ambition directly translate into a valuation number?
Well, instead of investors just analyzing the current concrete revenue, which might be healthy but limited, these companies use the narrative to inflate their perceived total addressable market, the TAM.
By talking about Mars, they're not just selling to a market of 7 or 8 billion people on Earth.
They're labeling it an interplanetary economy.
So the potential market is suddenly infinite, spanning planets and asteroid belts, and therefore no current valuation is too high when you project it against that kind of scale.
Exactly. It's the perfect justification for massive capital injections. It helps them attract huge venture funding, secure government grants, land big sponsors, all of it.
And that same powerful idea of working toward this infinite future also acts as a recruitment bait.
A very effective one. The story of work on Mars attracts the top world-class talent, people who are motivated by doing something historic.
And what's the bottom line implication for those employees, besides the mission?
Well, they're often willing to accept much lower pay, work far longer hours, and put up with really high-pressure environments, all because they genuinely feel the project is vital for the survival of humanity. Their professional sacrifice is seen as part of this grand, noble mission, which, is an enormous cost saving for the company.
That is an incredibly efficient business model. You recruit the best talent on the cheap by selling them the idea of saving the species. So what does this all mean for the actual business model? Especially for companies whose revenue right now is very much on Earth.
This leads to the big twist in the source: attention arbitrage. This is maybe the most brilliant commercial piece of the whole strategy.
Attention arbitrage.
The Mars narrative generates enormous, constant free press. Launches, concept art, visionary speeches, celebrity endorsements.
And they leverage all that free, high-status press to do what?
They essentially sell the idea of Mars, while their actual reliable revenue comes from totally unrelated terrestrial services.
Give me an example.
Think about it. A company might launch a massive, expensive rocket that, say, fails its orbital test, cost billions. But the free media attention from that spectacle is immediately used to drive subscriptions to a satellite internet service, or to secure lucrative government contracts for just Earth-based transport. The Mars dream is the giant, spectacular billboard for their steady, reliable, Earth-based cash flow.
So the dream is the marketing department, and the boring satellite deployments are what actually pay the bills.
Exactly. It's an incredibly smart use of PR capital. You're maximizing the return on investment from your own spectacular failures.
If we connect that to the big picture, it explains why the volume on the colonization story has to stay cranked up to 10 no matter what happens with the tech.
The narrative is the currency. It feeds the status driver for consumers and the infinite market for investors, all while shielding the real Earth-based business.
This raises a really important question then. How can the listener, the learner, apply some critical thinking here and separate genuine progress from just aspirational marketing?
Well, the source provides a really clear 4-point checklist to spot this pattern. It calls it the grift checklist.
Okay, this checklist is the framework for evaluating any of these big long-term ventures. Let's go through it. First point is you have to ask about verifiable deliverables.
That's right. Ignore the 50-year vision. Forget the concept art. Focus only on the short term. What are the next 12 to 24-month deliverables that can be publicly verified? We need concrete hardware, completed tests, demonstrated capabilities.
Not just exciting videos.
Right. Specific milestones that, if they miss them, would force some actual accountability.
Second point, and this feels crucial for anyone thinking of investing, Earth-bound viability.
This is the stress test.
If the Mars dream got canceled tomorrow, would the company still survive?
Yes. What is the business that survives on Earth, even if the Mars part never happened? If the whole business model just collapses without the Martian promise, that's a signal that the narrative itself is the real product, not the technology.
And that's a huge red flag.
The major one.
Okay, and the last 2 points are about piercing that mission shield by demanding technical honesty. The first is, do they have published budgets?
And I don't mean financial budgets, I mean the hard science.
Right.
Mass budgets, energy budgets, atmospheric requirements, the boring but essential stuff. Life support consumption per person, the tonnage needed for radiation shielding, the launch cadence required to sustain life. Are they giving you hard numbers that can be analyzed and challenged? Or are they just giving you inspirational language about making life multiplanetary?
If the answer is just vibes and visionary talk without the basic engineering math to back it up, you know what you're looking at.
A marketing vehicle. And the final point in the checklist gets right at that. Honesty about constraints.
They need to be transparent about how hard this actually is.
Exactly. Are they honest about the true cost per kilogram to orbit, the real scientific timelines to solve biological hurdles, the inherent risks? Or do they just rely on this utopian, inspirational messaging that waves away all the difficulties? True engineering progress always acknowledges constraints. Marketing pretends they don't exist.
It really feels like the whole checklist is designed to pierce that emotional shield we talked about, the status and the salvation, and force a hard look at the technical and financial homework.
It forces the goalpost back down to earth.
Absolutely. The moment a company has to reveal its constraints and its budgets, it's subject to those near-term falsifiable milestones.
Which is the exact opposite of the marketing lever we've been talking about, which It thrives where there's no accountability.
This has been a truly fascinating deep dive into the business of space dreams.
It really has.
We've explored that potent cocktail of status, salvation, and sci-fi wonder that fuels the Mars hype, and we identified these specific strategies like moving the goalposts and attention arbitrage to avoid accountability.
And for you, the learner, just remember this. The true test of a Mars colonization plan isn't in the excitement it generates. It's in the practical, verifiable constraints and the Earth-viable business models it's willing to disclose.
Ambition is absolutely necessary, but it's never a substitute for an energy budget.
Well said.
That leaves us with a provocative closing thought. If a project uses inspiration to excuse a failure to publish its mass and energy budgets, the fundamental math of survival in space, does that ambition truly serve the future? Or is it just leveraging our very human desire to be part of an aspirational identity? And what else in your world, beyond space exploration, is selling you an identity instead of a tested, verifiable product? Think about that, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.